Well, buckle up and get your self-care wagons ready to go because you are probably going to need them for October the 2nd. What was going on September the 30th? I don't know if you remember, but we had a T-square active between the moon in Capricorn opposing Jupiter in Cancer, and with the focal point of the T being Mercury in Libra. Now, on October the 2nd, we have another T-square that is forming, and this one is going to be the opposition between Mercury in Libra, Chiron retrograde in Aries, with the focal point of the T being Jupiter in Cancer. So let's dive into this, the cosmological narrative for October the 2nd. Before we get into it, I'm Michael the Hierophant, I'm a mystic and magi, and I have two quick promotions to just talk to you about. The first one is my completely free weekly ritual, spiritual and divination-based workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. It's every Wednesday at 6:30, and as I said before, it's completely free. We get together on Zoom, and we go through the last week's transits and the following week's transits, and I teach you how to delineate where these transits are taking place in your spiritual journey, so you can make better sense and integrate the highs and lows of your daily mundane life, and to help understand what the universal and what the creator wants these lessons to be for us, or for you personally, for your own cosmological narrative, so you can continue on with your consciousness growth and evolution. As we adventure through this dark forest we call life, even if we've been incarnate a million times before, we're trying to follow these footsteps that we know are ours, and our feet don't always fit in them all the time. And I think what better way to get to where we want to be in life, what better compass, what better map than the stars above that act as a constant reflection of our internal landscape. And again, an internal landscape reflection of both the highs and the lows, so we can make sense of them and understand how they're playing out in this greater story that we as humans are all playing into constantly. The second thing is that I have had a lot of messages about readings and astrological services. So I'm now offering that. I have the menu posted on TikTok, Instagram, and you can also DM me on both those or email me through my link tree for services. I have financial hardship or situational pricing available if you can't afford my standard rates. Let's not make astrology some exclusionary spiritual practice for just the wealthy or people that are regularly employed making a lot of money. That's not why I do this. It's not my intent, and so why would I offer those services? So I'll probably not say no. If you need a reading and you can't afford my normal rates, please just shoot me a DM, shoot me a message, explain your situation. We will work something out, and we will make it work. So let's dive into the cosmological narrative for October the 2nd. So there's two really big transits we're going to focus on in this video, and we're going to start with one, we'll break it down, and then we'll go through the other, we'll break it down, and then we'll try to synergize what all of this means together, because realistically, in a vacuum, October 2nd actually looks like it could be kind of a big day. This looks like it could potentially have some possible need to sit down and do some journaling and do some reflection. And if you don't do that, maybe just sit down and meditate and contemplate on what this story actually means for your life, because again, there's a comprehensive play between two different aspects, and regardless of how you look at it, they're likely affecting the same thing but in different angles, and that's how astrology tends to manifest. So the first of these two transits is the fact that Venus in Virgo is going to go conjunct with the South Node in Virgo. Let's break those down independently real quick. So when Venus is in Virgo, our aesthetics, our sensuality, our sensual pleasures, they all become refined through this lens of both perfection and discrepancy. And what I mean by that is because Virgo wants everything to go according to plan. I like to think of Virgo as being the sign of ritual. And that's why a lot of times you'll get the stereotype or the archetypal picture of the holistic, healthy witch. It's like, I need to be able to do 1 through 10, and if I can't do my steps 1 through 10, well then it's moot, throw it out the window, it doesn't work. That's Virgo. And so when Venus is in Virgo, Venus is very much acting according to that. A perfectionist in knowing what steps 1 through 10 are, knowing what needs to happen, and also understanding the discrepancy of knowing, oh, if I miss points 2, 3, and 4, this ritual's moot and it doesn't work as well. However, that's not obviously an absolute truth. Just because you don't have something you think you need, which Venus in Virgo tends to think and be very aware of, doesn't mean that it won't work for you and that you can't get some sort of enjoyment or be happy. This is obviously where Venus is in its fall in Virgo. Now, with the South Node in Virgo, the South Node in Virgo suggests that we are letting go of some sort of karmic imprint in the Virgoan section of our chart, specifically with what you might believe to be, or what you might attribute to be, negative qualities of Virgo, which would be perfectionism, over-criticism, hypervigilance, anything that requires us to constantly be on the 9 at all times, or prevents us from doing or taking some sort of action in our ritual. And then an example of a South Node in Virgo would be like, just because you can't do step 2 of 10 steps doesn't mean the entire magical ritual is completely not worth doing. Still do it, still put the time in. It's like missing an herb in a ritual and being like, oh, well, I guess I can't do it. No, you can still do it. You're just not going to get the corresponding effect of whatever that herb is in that ritual then. And so when the South Node is in Virgo, again, we're being asked to release these karmic imprints. Karmic imprints being things from our childhood, things brought over from past lives, and quite often a combination of both of them. And then we continue to play out and act on those behaviors, those karmic behaviors. So when Venus goes conjunct with the South Node in Virgo, there's a couple different manifestations of how this could show up in your life, again, depending on where it's at in your chart. Venus conjunct with the South Node in Virgo could bring back a past lover, a past romantic lover from this life or a past life. And this is where it might be difficult because you might not recognize that they're a past lover from a different life. However, look to the timing. If someone comes back into your life and there is a romantic attraction during this window of time, what I would actually put October 1st to October 3rd, there's a good chance that maybe this person comes from your past, or at least archetypally represents some sort of karmic imprint from your past. Now, with Venus being conjunct with the South Node, this is suggestive that, again, this person might just be returning. However, this could be also a release of karmic values. This could be a release of things that have held us back from basically achieving our Venetian desires and sensibilities and pleasures in this life. Maybe we're being, again, with Venus and Virgo, we're being too specific with how we want our desires to manifest in our life. And so maybe this will be an opportunity for us to let go of some of that. Another way this could show up is that our Venetian desires supersede and create motivation for us to release some sort of karmic imprint in the Virgoan section of our chart. So Venus conjunct South Node can take on many different types of interpretations, and I honestly didn't even cover them all because there's all kinds of different schools of astrology that would view this conjunction with all kinds of different manifestations. And so I would look for things that involve your relationships, things that involve women, things that involve the desires and things that you want, things that involve sex, and anything that involves your past, whether it's a belief, people, a karmic imprint that you recognize as being something you've karmically brought over from a past life, maybe through meditation or past life regression. I would look for all that for the 1st to the 3rd and see how that manifests in your life. Now, this is undoubtedly being complicated by the T-square, and this is the other big transit we're going to dive into. Now, on September 30th, we had that T-square between the moon in Capricorn and Jupiter in Cancer, with the focal point being Mercury in Libra. And essentially what that T-square created was a tension. Think of T-squares as like a pressure cooker. It's a boiling point, and it's a temporary boiling point because we're only going to experience them for, like depending on what planets, if they're not outer generational planets, we're probably going to only experience them for 24 to 72 hours, maybe at their peak intensity. And so a T-square is creating this pressure cooker moment. And on the 30th, we had the pressure cooker moment between our emotional body, where we were needing to be in control of things, and our new belief, I would call it, our new learned wisdom about learning how to self-care. Now, this T-square we're happening on the 2nd is the opposition is happening between Mercury in Libra and Chiron retrograde in Aries. So elementally, Chiron retrograde in Aries is going to be reminding internally, quite likely. I wouldn't expect for the Chiron element of this to show up physically. This is quite likely going to be something internal, something in our emotional or spiritual body. And with the opposition with Mercury in Libra, where Mercury in Libra is quite fixated with being a people pleaser, trying to keep the scales of Libran justice and karmic value balanced, there's this opposition that's created, and an opposition is of the nature of Saturn, which tends to create situational environments that we have to react to. There's situational delays, restrictions, or conflicts that are of the nature of Saturn that speak to whatever Saturn is doing in our chart. And Saturn's retrograde in Pisces right now, so it's quite likely that whatever this opposition between Chiron retrograde in Aries opposing Mercury in Libra has to do with what Saturn is doing in the Piscean section of our chart. So this is quite likely not going to be a new scenario. This is quite likely going to be another speed bump or road bump akin to what we experienced on the 30th come about. But this time will be a little bit different because where Chiron retrograde is triggering us about some sort of emotional wound, it's the culmination of our childhood wounds kind of summarized into a fancy title. That's Chiron. There's some sort of communication, maybe a conversation, maybe you read something, maybe you see something that jars something in your emotional body and re-triggers you. It's going to re-trigger that chironic childhood wound. And chironic childhood wounds are the deepest wounds that give us the most value in life. They're typically the wounds that have pierced us the deepest and have not healed. They have continued to fester into our adult lives. And the more attention and the more focus we put on working to heal our chironic wounds, the more of a callus we develop. And then that actually gives us an impetuous ability to help other people with their wounds, because it's like we have developed such a resilience and such a wisdom and experience gained with dealing with that wound. It allows us to help and heal others. So I would expect a Chiron retrograde in Aries opposite Mercury in Libra to be a triggered moment. There's something that's triggering. It's quite likely coming through some sort of perception, some sort of speech, some sort of dialogue, or maybe even a conversation you're just overhearing or listening to, or a video you're watching on the computer or on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Now, the focal point of the T-square is going to be Jupiter in Cancer. And so this is going to be a little bit different, whereas on the 30th, we had this push and pull, this tug of war between what our emotional body wanted, which was control, and this learned wisdom of where we need to self-care. The learned wisdom of the self-care is actually going to be the focal point of this T-square on the 2nd. So whatever that wound is being triggered, the way that we can actually get out of it and like learn to smooth it out and integrate that road bump is going to be to push forward and advocate for our own self-care, what Jupiter has been showing us in the Cancerian area of our chart. Now, whatever that self-care is, it's going to be a little bit different for all of us, but it's going to be an action taken on behalf of the wisdom we've gained in the Cancerian area of our chart. Now, if you want to give yourself a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a spiritual difficulty, you can always utilize the opposite of where Jupiter, the focal point of this T-square, sits, which would be the empty house of Capricorn right now. There's no planets transiting through Capricorn. And if we did, we would have a grand cross, which would provide another opportunity for T-square relief, pressure relief. However, you don't need a planet there in order for me to tell you that you can use the Capricorn area of your chart in order to get out of and express the frustration of this T-square. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that. However, and it's going to basically be more of like the leap of faith option, but you need to know that that's an option for you. So the Capricorn option would be, instead of self-caring, it's going to be having patience, recognizing that delays in life happen, and continuing to show up and put the work in. Because again, we're dealing with the tension that's being created is that opposition between Mercury and Libra and Chiron retrograde in Aries. And it is so fitting that, of course, one of the methods out that isn't self-caring is going to be the Saturnian option, which is recognizing that shit happens. Life is difficult. We are constantly given conflicts and drama to deal with in our lives. And sometimes you just gotta wait. You just gotta recognize that shit is shit, and you are calling it and acknowledging it for what it is. And that these difficulties come into our life in order to present us with opportunities to fail so that we can remember and learn how to show up better next time. So if you're feeling a little bit, you're feeling like you want to give yourself a little bit of a spiritual challenge on October the 2nd, you can relieve and express some of this T-square resurgent childhood pain that's coming up through some sort of conversation by just recognizing that there are difficulties and delays in life, and you just got to keep showing up and doing the work. And feelings come, feelings go, they pass, they're temporary, and I know that that's really difficult, but you have two options here: self-care or be mature and realize and display patience that things happen. If you are into these astrological and spiritual narratives, I encourage you to join my class every Wednesday at 6:30. You can also book me for astrological services, readings, whatever it is. If you have something special in mind that I don't have listed, let's talk about it. You can DM me on TikTok, Instagram. You can shoot me an email through my link tree. I have situational and financial hardship pricing available for everybody. Astrology is a sacred art. It's a sacred tool of divination. This is not meant to be exclusively for people who are wealthy or are more well off in life. That is not how I practice. It's not how I'll ever practice. So please consider messaging me, setting up a setting up a service so we can discuss what's happening in your life. And if I don't see you in my emails, I'll see you in class. And if I don't see you in class, I'll see you on the next video. Everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I will be back tomorrow for Friday's forecast.